So, today I wanted to talk about navigating pleasure and intimacy as a woman of God or of Christian faith. And if my computer moves, I apologize. My dog has decided to take up residence on the pillow on which I am placing my laptop on. Um, so, this is really bright. Um, so, just wanted to remind I'm not a therapist, I'm not a sex therapist, I'm not a licensed dating coach or a matchmaker. Um, I'm sorry, my dog's belly is like completely exposed. Um, I'm not a licensed mental health counselor, though I would love to be one in the future. Um, I am not a social worker. I am a certified child life specialist. I do have experience working in the psychosocial field, in a psychosocial support capacity with patients and families. I apologize if my shirt keeps going down. That's not my intention. I'm not really, hey, my buttons. I'm not really big on cleavage. I've never really been big on cleavage ever. I just realized that I never wear anything. You know how some women wear like the push-up bras and like the cuppeth runneth over situation. I've never, ever, 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 except when I've worn a bikini, which just kind of goes along sexuality and stuff like that. I've worn a bikini. I don't even think really I've worn a bikini ever out. I've worn it at home when I was living in Miami because we did have a pool in the backyard, but I don't think I've ever like worn an actual bikini like out in public. I'm very modest, which is it kind of goes along with what I'm going to discuss right now, which is it was weighing on me as I was doing. I feel so proud of myself because I actually put my, if the expression is put my nose to the grind, I guess, and I actually started doing my TEFL certification course because I was like, I need to start doing something because job hunting has been really bleak. Even though I like applying to jobs, even though it could be kind of tedious and frustrating because you have to fill. And one thing, I know this is a side note that's not really related to what I'm going to talk about, but I don't know why when you do job applications, you upload your resume, right? And then they ask you to fill out your work history all over again. And I go, why do they do this? It's so tedious. Bless you. I'm sorry. And I put on perfume. I haven't put on perfume in like, bless you. I'm so sorry. My dog just sneezed. I haven't put on perfume in like the longest time. And I said, and I actually changed. I was in a like a dry fit or dry wick, just like a casual long sleeve shirt. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to look presentable because I want to be conscious of the way I look and the way I present myself, right? You always want to, when you look your best, you feel your best. So, that's why this is like one of my favorite shirts. It's actually from H&M. It's so old. I got this shirt at, what's that mall in Florida? Oh my gosh, International Mall. It's like in Doral. There's like Dolphin Mall in Doral, and then there's Miami International Mall, which like I feel like was almost becoming abandoned. They closed a bunch of like different department stores in it. Um, but anyways, I got it at H&M, and H&M was like one of my favorite stores when I used to go like shopping out, like actually out to places. Um, I'm sorry, I'm just buttoning the little button, but it is like one of my favorite shirts, and I can never give it away. I've always been like on the fence of like, oh, I've had it. I very much believe in the Maria Kondo method of like, if something doesn't bring you joy, then get rid of it. Yay! Not it's kind of blousy though. Like it kind of reminds me of like a '70s kind of shirt. Like why is this? Oh, no, it's fine. No, did I do this the right way? I'm so sorry. I shouldn't be so invested in in my shirt. Let me try to sit back a little bit. Um, I'm not used to. I don't really wear my hair down that much either. I usually wear it up or in a ponytail or a bun. So if I'm going like this constantly, I apologize because I'm just not used to wearing my hair down. And it used to be actually I cut my own hair last, was it June or July or August? I actually watched a YouTube video and I saw that this girl basically you bring your hair to the front and then you tie it underneath your chin and then you cut it. That's how I cut my hair. I don't even know if it's all the same length, but that's what I did. And it's growing super long now. But anyways, what I was gonna say. So yeah, dressing modestly, not being provocative. It kind of all ties into what I'm going to talk about now, which is navigating the dating world as and navigating pleasure and intimacy as a woman of faith and a woman of God or of Christian faith, right? Because I'll be honest, and I'm sure if you, it's funny because that video actually got a lot of views, which was about um, my experience with my first time. I don't like to call it losing my virginity, I call it gaining an experience, but it was my first time. And in modern mainstream media and society, we call it losing your virginity. I was 32 and I was living in Virginia at the time. And not to like rehash that or highlight it, but I was also very vulnerable. I was scared. Um, and to be honest, the main reason why I did it is because if you have followed me, I appreciate it. And if you haven't watched one of my videos, it's okay. Whatever floats your boat. But if you did happen to watch some of the videos that I did about like sexuality and like let's talk about sex or let's talk about porn and stuff like that, um, in that I kind of shed light and I discuss like my experience of going through that. And I literally, the reason behind it was I didn't I didn't want to die a virgin. Like I basically, so I went through a very scary stalking, hacking, cyberbullying. Not to say it's over, I've just learned to manage it better. I didn't have that much proof, and proof is everything. Proof, if you ever, my advice, if you're somebody, my ears like kind of, I'm just gonna go like this. I have like elf ears, and they're like Lord of the Rings, those like elf people. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Um, Shout out, Lord of the Rings is actually a really good series. So, anyways, going back to what I was saying. Um, yeah, so I didn't want to die a virgin. Plain and simple. I was very scared. I was experiencing strange phenomena that I'm not going to get too much into that was going on in my building, in my apartment itself. I consulted maintenance. Um, it was just really hard to pinpoint. Very, very outlandish, bizarre things that I never thought I would go through in my life. Um, it left me really confused, hurt, dumbfounded, disappointed, and I wanted to feel normal. Like I never, one thing I will say is that I never accepted my fate in terms of whatever was going on. I never was like, no, this is not going to be the way it is. Like I'm not going to be a victim of I am a victim of it, but I was like I'm not going to be a victim of targeting, stalking. Like I'm just not. So what I did is I focused on the things that I had control over, and I wanted to feel normal. And part of that was like, you know what? I'm going to take back my power and I'm going to do the dating scene. And I did in Virginia. I don't know if I did it right. I will say in the little blurb paragraph that I have for the videos, um, I explained that there's no one recipe or end all be all for how you date. And I'm sorry, I was just twitching. Like when you have an involuntary spasm and it's like, woo. So if you just see my eye fluttering, it was just, yeah. Anyways, and I am kind of tired, so if my eye twitches, I apologize. Um, I can't control involuntary muscle spasms in my body. Anyways, meanwhile, my dog is totally just hanging out, like chilling. This is her norm, by the way. This is her norm of how she lays down. Um, so what was I saying? Yeah. And so yeah, I wanted to feel normal, so I told myself, let me go and pursue dating. And like I said, there's no right way to date. You do it, and you do your best, right? And there are dating coaches, there are videos. I've watched dating coaches. There's oh my God, Elliot something. I forgot his last name. It was Elliot something, Matthew Hussey. There's this other guy who had dating videos and stuff. And I used to go on websites and whatnot to figure out. I think one was called lovepanky.com. I have no problem saying any of this because I always tell myself, if I wish that I could have had someone as a peer that I could have watched on YouTube that was like maybe a little bit older than me or had some experience and they could have shed light on it. I would have loved that. Um, so, but anyways, yeah, I did do that. And so here's the interesting part. So growing up, I never was I was a late bloomer, just to preface it. I didn't have any hormones, like being horny, that never happened to me. I almost thought I was asexual. And then I questioned my sexuality overall and I go, oh my God, my like on the other side of it, like same sex, whatever. And then I was like, no, because I wasn't turned on by that. Um, because I felt weird, I felt abnormal. And even people would tell me, they're like, you're weird for like not, I forgot who, but I know I've had comments like, you don't flirt, you don't do this, you don't seduce in like high school. I never did that in college. I never did that. So I felt very almost isolated and like atypical, I guess. Um, I don't know if like neurologically or biologically something was not working right. I didn't go to the OBGYN until I think I was 24 or 25 for the first time. And I'll never forget, she told me like, what did she say? She thought I was, oh no, you know what? I'm sorry, I wasn't 24. I was 27. I think I was 27. And I went to the OB, her name was Dr. Simone or Simone. She had her PA or physician assistant there. And I think I was studying physician assistant studies at the time, actually. And in my mind, I remember like, oh, the PA's in the room. I was like, oh, interesting. Um, just a little thought bubble, right? Um, so yeah, I never forget. She asked me, oh, when's the last time? She goes, are you sexually active? I'm like, no. And she's like, you're, are you sure? Like, she's like, don't worry. Like, your mom is, she's like, they're like, you can tell us. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm not. And they're like, they didn't believe me. And I was like, no, I was 27. I had my first pap smear or whatever. And then, and she's like, oh, well, in that case, don't worry. I'll be very easy. I'll use the baby speculum. And I'll never forget. I told her, I was like, no, give me the big one. I was like, give me the regular one. And she was like, you know, and then when she said, because when you go to the OBGYN, if you've never been to one, just to prep you, they do like a breast exam. They touch your boobs and you have to raise your arms up in the air. And they massage to feel for lumps for breast cancer and things like that, or masses. And I was just like, I'll never forget. I was like, whoop. You would think I would be really shy about it, but no, I think at the time I had already seen porn and stuff, so I felt a little bit more experienced and not so in the dark about it. But I'll never forget, I lift my arms up like, yeah, and my chest was exposed, and I'm like, she probably thought I was lying through my teeth, and I wasn't. But that's just a little bit of background into there. But um, I will say, so everything happened, and my whole life kind of changed, and all this scary stuff started happening. I did not know how to fix or go about, and then I think so. And also there was a movie called A Nice Girl Like You, and it's with um what's that girl's name, Lucy Hale, from Lucy Hale. Um and I don't know why it came up on my feed. It was like the featured movie on my Netflix. Like when you open the Netflix app in your phone or the computer, it shows like a movie that they like feature that say, oh, recommended for you. And I watched it and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, this, I was like, that's me. I was like, that I'm that girl. Like, because the main character, if you haven't seen the movie, it's actually a really cute movie. She's very, so the premise of the storyline goes, she, her, she doesn't like sex, or like she doesn't get into sex. No kinky, like it was very like she was more into her career, her studies. She had a boyfriend and everything, and when they had sex, they even like acted out a scene of them having sex, right, or filmed it. And she was just, I'll never forget, she was lying there and he was, on top of her, gyrating, thrusting into her, into it. And she was just like, like that was the girl's face. And I'm like, and she was like basically like looking at the time, like, okay. And, her boyfriend's head was down, like he was going into it. And I'm just like, bro, I'm like, I mean, I hadn't done it at the time, but I remember I watched it. And then so they decided, I forgot what happened. I don't know if she caught him watching porn, which is funny because this is different for me. And you guys and whoever you are, if you might disagree with me about this, I'm okay, and it's fine because I'm putting I realize that I'm being subjugated to scrutiny because people are gonna have differences in opinions than me. Um, I would be okay if I had a husband or boyfriend. This is just me. If he watched porn, I know that sounds crazy. It sounds totally crazy, but for me, it's like their form of masturbation, right? And I've also watched it. I don't mind saying that. And if you're like, oh my God, and this is where I talk about navigating, in my experience with it, navigating pleasure and intimacy as a Christian woman, as a woman of faith, because the church, especially Catholic Church, that's very much frowned down upon. Premarital sex, masturbation, all of that is so like, you know, frowned down upon. So, um, yeah. But anyways, just going back to what I was saying about the storyline, she actually, they break up, and because she said, okay, it's either me or the porn, and he loved video games and he loved watching porn, and he broke up with her, and he was like, you don't like sex, you don't want to do anything with me. He's like, and she's like, he moved. I don't know if she moved out of the house or he moved out of the house. One of them did, but she they had an argument, and he was in the front yard, and he basically was like, you don't give me head, you don't give me oral, you're not into sex. He's like, just admit it, you don't like sex, you're a prude. And she's like, and she took it really personally and defensively. She's like, I am not a prude. She's like, and he's like, try to say dick. And she's like, she couldn't say the word dick. She's like, he's like, try to say penis. And she's like, you know, and it was funny because I'm like, oh my God, that's me. Because growing up, I never said any of those words. I never said bra. My nana used to call her purse a pocketbook. I mean, I was very, very, very modest. When you think of like church girl, you know, um, that's kind of like who I was, and I still am, but just a little bit more mature and grown up and stuff, unexperienced. But anyway, so the movie goes. She decides to fully embrace and expose herself to the world of sex, like everything. Like she basically wanted to become a sex guru and a sexpert, right? So that for herself, because and I'll never forget. So I forgot what her job was. I don't know if she worked in hospitality or catering or something, or marketing, but there was an event that she went to that she was working, and she goes into the bathroom, and I never forget, she meets a cute guy at this event or something, and she was breaking down or crying because, you know, she had broken up with her boyfriend, or, you know, she was unhappy. She felt very worthless and like weird. And so, but she's in the bathroom and she decides, she's like, you know what? She says the word cock. She says, I'm going to say the word cock. And she says it like out loud in the mirror to her. She's like, you know, and so I was like, I was laughing because I literally, that was me. I couldn't say any of those words. You know, still to this day, it's like, the first time I ever did sexting or talk dirty to someone, that was like a whole new, like okay, so here's, now we're going to get into like the nitty gritty of why I'm talking about this. So just like she went on this self-discovery, sexual exploration journey, I kind of did the same. I actually got the idea from her. And you may laugh, but I actually created like a sexy, spicy bucket list because of because of that movie. Like I literally have a regular bucket list and I have like a sexy, spicy bucket list, and it is on my notes app. I'm not going to show it, but just to get an idea of what it looks like. People are like, I do it. Let me tell you, I encourage you to do this because if you're someone like me, and the reason why I did it is because psychologically speaking, I felt, it's called cognitive dissonance, when your beliefs or mentality about a specific thing is misaligned with your like intentions or your actions, right? So I was experiencing cognitive dissonance in a sense psychologically, but I did, so I have this is my regular bucket list. It looks like this. It has little emojis at the top. It's really cute. So some of the things, like the first thing is which actually I'm going to delete that check mark because really I haven't, it needs to be fenced in. I wish to give Bonnie a proper home, one with a yard, whether I buy or rent, and it has grass. And I'm just gonna put, and is fenced in because this one that I'm in is not fenced in. And it's fenced in so she can play freely and have all the zoomies she wants. And then I put number 2 just to give you an idea. Make snow angels when it snows, which I didn't do. Number 3, make a snowman. Number 4, learn the flower duet, Duo de Fleurs Lacmé in French, which if you don't know opera, Lacmé is a popular opera. And then number 5 was have sex for the first time, and then a few more times after that, and complete my sexy time bucket list. Visit a ninja warrior gym. I want, which I don't even think that's gonna happen. I put get a PhD from Yale or a second master's because I've always wanted to go to Yale. Um, so just like to get an, oh, I put understand football better because I like basketball, I like tennis, I don't mind golf, but football is a sport, except now I watch the Super Bowl, so that kind of counts. And there's a bunch of other things, but the sexy, spicy bucket list, I'm not going to get too much into it, but it looks like this. And I put here another character that I resonated with. There was a show called Jane the Virgin, and she was that literally that her. I realized her, Rory Gilmore, and Jess Newgirl are like my spirit characters. It's almost like the shows were like written for me, like so. Anyways, just to give you an idea, I do have a few check marks though. Number one was read a romance novel. I have done that. Watch the sexy romantic movies I've been too shy to watch on Netflix, like because then they're very like steamy. I put 365 Days, Valeria, Sex Life, In Love All Over Again. Did I ever see that? I don't know. Number three, attend a sex seminar, tantra, whatever. I watched the Goop project on. So the Goop, which is Gwyneth Paltrow's company, they did a whole like expose kind of and docu series about pleasure and intimacy. I put together number four, put together a badass goddess playlist to channel my inner Sasha Fierce like Beyonce would, or Reputation tour Taylor T Swift, because I think Reputation Taylor Swift was very fierce and like in your face, and that was when she came out from being like, we knew Taylor Swift as being this country pop or country singer essentially who, she grew up in the limelight, but she had her guitar. She was wearing, I think one of my favorite eras was the Fearless era where she had the tinsel, like tassel silver dress, and she had the curls, like the wavy curls, and she put 13 on her wrist. Like that was my favorite, in my opinion. I don't know what yours, but um, uh, I'm trying to think if there's any other era that I like. Oh no, I lie. I take it back. 1989 era was like when she came out with the song Style, I was like, oh my God. I love that song. I thought that was the coolest song. And then when she paired off with Jack Antonoff to produce and, create the albums, I'm like, what a cool, like a dynamic duo. But anyways, my point is that the persona, the energy that she was exuding, that's what I wanted to exemplify and embody. And then, what's her face? Beyonce, when she's on stage, when Beyonce's on stage, she's on stage. That woman commands presence. And now her daughter, I think, is kind of following suit the same way. And they're performers, right? They're performers. And I'm going to say the alter ego is Sasha Fierce, but that's her performance. When she gets on stage, she is Sasha Fierce, right? I don't know where Sasha Fierce came from, but my point is that's the energy that I wanted to embody. I put watch porn once. Number six, make a Tinder account and actually follow through with it. And I put God forgive me. I'm not kidding. I literally wrote, if you want to see here, where it says, I'm going to put my finger on it. It says, God forgive me, right there. Um, take a high heels sexy ladies class, which is I did do in Virginia. It's not a burlesque class, it's a heels class. So you dance in heels. So I bought a pair of like lace up short booties, and you should be wearing knee pads because sometimes you get on the floor and you have to whip your hair. It's like hairography. And it was so opposite of who I was because I did ballet. I was very demure and proper with a prim and proper. So like I said, let me do all the things that make me feel uncomfortable, and that was one of them. I put learn how to flirt since I suck at it, and practice flirting with a stranger, which I did that through Tinder, and I think I got a lot better at. I will say though, I will say that in any dating app, I've learned for me that I value really good conversation. And a man who can't hold a conversation to me, they lose all my attention. Like if a man can't reciprocate and actually engage you in conversation, right, in communication, and build rapport with you that way and ask you questions about your life. And it's so easy because, as women, like especially if someone looks at my profile, I have a bunch of pictures of me with animals, because I love animals. I'm with a horse. Um, there's one where I'm at the zoo. There's one with my dog. Um, so there's a, that there's an, and also I put it in my bio, I always write a lot of different things. Like I love cookies, I like to bake, I like to cook. I talk about the things that I'm looking for, like different values and stuff like that. So there's tons of content. There's tons of, not say ammunition, but like there's tons of meaty substance and content that a man could say, hey, I see you like this and this. Tell me more about that. I have yet to really, there's been one or two, maybe three men who have really, I think, gone the extra mile and known how to like keep like hold and sustain a conversation. Because you, and I'm sure if you're as a woman or a man, if you've been through this, you understand what I'm saying, where you're sitting there in a dating app and you're like, God, you're like pulling teeth. You're like, say something, like don't. And I hate when I have to unmatch from people and delete the match when they're like, I'm like, hey, do you play? I asked someone recently, do you play sports? You look very physically active. Yes, I play tennis and racquetball or pickleball. I'm like, okay. I didn't even write back. I didn't even know what to say. Like, oh, that's great. Like I don't, and then when I mean carrying the conversation, that's like if I continue to ask questions, that's a huge red flag. If a guy doesn't want to get to know you genuinely and honestly probably just wants to fuck you. I'm not even talking friends with benefits. I'm talking like you are an orifice. Like instead of getting a blow up sex doll, you are literally just a live person that they can fuck. I'm being honest, right? So, it's kind of just like the people who, and mind you, I'm talking, and I know the more archaic, traditional, old school people who go about dating, I'm talking back like 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Like our grandparents, right? You're talking about people in their 80s or 90s, about, back then they went to the Sadie Hawkins dance. When you court back, so way back when you liked someone, when you went steady, you'd say, we're going steady. I think a guy would give a pin to a girl. Like they'd give a pin and the girl would wear it and be like, I'm with like Connor, or um, Daryl asked me out, and we're going steady now, So, and they would call it courting, not dating, that you would court the person. It's so different now. Courting today is like, hey, you up? How you doing? Um, it's so different these days. Um, So yeah, I do think I'm very one. I know I'm kind of going off on a side tangent, but that's kind of how I go about dating. And I used to feel really bad unmatching from people. Now I'm just like, well, if all they're gonna give me is one word answers or one syllable like answers, then it's really not worth my time to even invest. Because and mind you, this is going not. I'm not even talking a relationship. I'm talking like just trying to cultivate a friendship. Because if like, let's say you're just looking, like for me, I've been kind of more on the like leaning towards doing a more casual approach. I don't mean sleeping with a bunch of people. Like one day I'm with Luke or Lucas, I'm just making up names, and the next day I'm with Harry, and the next day I'm with Johnny, and the next day I'm with Greg. I'm not. It's not like that. If I do a more casual thing, I can talk to multiple people. I want to get to know you, but when I narrow it down, I'm going to go towards the person that can keep me engaged in conversation, who's going to want to talk to me on the phone, not like for hours, but just, like, hey, what's up? How are you? Um, and yeah, that's the guy that's going to take the cake over the guy that's like, yo, you good? It's just, and it shows, and it's sad because some of these men look so gorgeous or physically fit and toned and perfect jaw structure, but they're dicks. Not to be rude, but some of them are dicks, and I don't know if that's because they didn't have role models growing up, or because they were entitled or privileged, or they're trying to compensate for some other part of themselves, and they want to have this inflated sense of ego or sense of self to come off as more attractive, I guess. I don't know. And then when it comes down to it, then when you get to know them, their interpersonal skills are like, their emotional intelligence skills are, right? Their emotional quotient. So, you sit here and as a woman, I would say, I'm not super, super smart. I do know a little bit about a lot. I've worked in various industries. I do think I'm pretty well versed and well rounded, and I'm a pretty good conversationalist. Like I've developed that also because working as a server and working in customer service and in healthcare as a psychosocial support specialist and person, I had to engage in assessment. I had to do like informal assessments, like open, like interviewing patients, asking them open-ended questions. So I got really good at that. So it's kind of frustrating, like when you're going to the dating pool, and mind you, like I said, casual dating. I'm not talking about like, hey, are you ready to shack up and get married? That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for just like, hey, like, do we get along? Do we vibe well? Is there attraction? I mean, obviously, let me tell you, physical attraction, that's why we swipe on the people, right? I'm going by online dating because that's the most, I think, relevant for me at least, and other people. Unless you're one of the lucky few and you actually, maybe you go to your church, or maybe you go to a meetup group or a run club or your gym or whatever, or you meet through a friend of a friend. It does happen like that. Um, but for me, it's like that's what we go by. We go by physical attraction, right? That's why we swipe and we're like, yeah. Um, so yeah. Um, but just going back to my list, um, another thing I put is number 9. And it's funny because to some people, probably a few of you, would be like, you put learn how to flirt on your sexy bucket list or sexy dating, and I go, yeah, because I didn't know how to. Because like I said, when I flirt, I don't really like, I don't know how to. I'd rather talk. The way for me, I've learned what's really attractive to me is when a man can, like I said, hold his own. A man that has, not to say worldly experiences, but he's interested about life. He he's an avid learner, a doer. He's proactive. He may not have like the most gregarious personality, but he's outgoing, right? He's personable. He's friendly. He treats everyone with respect. Like that's the kind of person, right? And if I got in a room with him, we could sit down and have a conversation about X, Y, Z, whether it's politics, religion, um, culture, music, media, movies, books, gardening, cooking, whatever, and he can carry on a conversation like that. More often than not, a lot of these men I've spoken to, they can't. And it's so when I say about flirting, for me, it's like my definition of flirting is almost like being able to have this really, sorry, excuse my French, bomb ass conversation, like a fire. I know it's a really millennial term where I say fire, but it's true. Like I want to have a really good, meaningful, not super emotive and heartfelt, like lovey dovey, just like, hey, let's talk or whatever. And then if you're physically attractive, forget about it. Like I will, I was going to say something derogatory. I was going to be like, panties will drop. But it's true. For me, I'm attracted to, like, if you're smart, not like rocket scientist smart, but like, that means, so here's the thing, a man that can carry on a conversation, and if you're paying attention, listen up, it shows, number one, that you are cultured. It shows, and I don't mean cultured like, oh, you have to come from an upper echelon of society. I mean, like, you're someone who you actively seek out information, right? You're well read. You know both sides of the story when it comes to, let's say, politics. You know about current events that are happening, maybe. You're passionate about maybe one particular topic. Let's say you're passionate about poetry. Let's say you're passionate about songwriting if you're a musician. Let's say you're passionate about, um, I've even met men where they downplayed their field. They're like, oh, I do accounting, and I'm like, they're like, yeah, not fun, I know. I'm like, no. I'm like, please engage me in whatever. Another guy I spoke to recently, that I kind of cut things off with because for this very reason, because the conversation was like it lacked, right? Was and I had to tell him, listen, we're not like engaging in any conversation. And the thing is too, when you get date, I highly recommend, don't just date someone because of their looks. Date someone that you can be friends with, because friendship, laughter, fun, those are the things that are going to carry you through life versus like, because sex, physical intimacy, once that person leaves your bed, yeah, it feels really good. Let me tell you, and I've learned that I love physical touch. I love sex, feels so good. But really, what's going to sustain you long term, if you're looking for long term, or if you're looking to actually have a formidable, meaningful, substantial, fulfilling, those are a lot of adjectives, relationship or connection with somebody, the physical intimacy is only going to get you so far. If you look at all the couples that have lasted, successful couples, like this would be, that would be such a good sociological study, or like a psychological study to research like longevity in marriages. What makes a marriage last? What makes it, what sustains a good marriage, right? Is it the sex? Is it communication? Is it open communication? Is it honesty, fidelity, respect? Like, I would love to know that. The people who've been married 30 something, 40 years, right? What's the secret sauce? I do think, I will say, from the couples I've seen that have lasted that long, I think they never stop dating each other, and they're best friends. Like literally, they're maybe not like best friend like your biffle, but like your, they can be in total silence and be okay with each other. They can be in the same room and have their backs to each other and reading a book, and they're totally fine. Or they can do like play mini golf, and they have the time of their lives and they don't get overly competitive. Or they're they engage in like fun, childish, playful behavior. Um, they can talk for hours about anything and everything. They got each other's backs, right? Like there's people, I think, when you have someone's back, because that's what happens when you're in a relationship and you're a couple, you have the other person's back. Like let's say you're in a relationship or you're married and your spouse loses their job and they get fired, right? Or let's say a relationship, right? Let's say something new. The boyfriend loses his job or the girlfriend loses her job, and or she decides to quit. The person that's a unit that works as a team, they're going to be like, I support you. Whatever your decision is, let's figure out this out together. What what's the game plan, right? Versus like, oh my God, you like let that person's alone and they have to figure it out on their own. Or God forbid, let's say someone gets sick. I've seen really heartwarming, touching videos where the husband is in a motorcycle accident or gets hit by a truck or something or whatever, or they're on a bike and he gets hit by a car and they have to go through rehabilitation. I've seen videos of wives who have cancer and their husbands, the boyfriend comes and he's there, shaving her head, or, you know, um, doing like she's getting her chemo and she has to do this cold wrap so she doesn't lose her hair, you know, and to help with the nausea and stuff like that. That's a teammate. And that I think is what's going to sustain you, for the long term. That's just my opinion. That's what I think. And it's almost like we've gotten to this mode now in society where it's like, and I know again I'm kind of deviating off the topic, but it all kind of goes together, right? When you talk about it, of high value relationships, right? And high value connections. Um, and even within short term ones too, I think the same thing could be said, right? You want to have meaningful, engaging connections with people that are built on a solid foundation. And, solid foundation requires communication, open communication, honesty, being candid, transparent. I have no problem like expressing myself to somebody that I'm talking to, even if it's brand new. I would rather talk about the uncomfortable and go there versus like be more reticent and then have this like evasive, like ambiguous, you know, um, beat around the bush kind of situation. Like, oh, we know it's there, but we don't want to discuss it. That's not what I'm all about. Um, but anyways, let me go back to my list. I realize I'm kind of switching gears. But yeah, that's my sexy bucket list. The next one was I put buy sexy ass lingerie and totally enjoy wearing it and not feel bad about it at all. And then there's other ones related to sex. Like, I'm not going to get too much. Like, one of them is, I don't know if it's too risque. I mean, so far YouTube hasn't like said anything about or flagged my videos for this, for the content. But like I wrote, I'll say one that's more about it, have sex in a villa. I don't know, for some reason. I think because, when you watch James Bond movies, I grew up watching James Bond movies. So, there was one scene, I think it was in one of the Daniel Craig movies, where they're like in Italy or Venice and they have sex in the villa. Like, I'm like, woo, sign me, sign me up for that. And it looked so like effortless, and like, she's lounging like on the bed, with the sheets covering her, and he's like, Daniel Craig, he's Daniel Craig, and he rolls out, butt naked, and he's looking outside the villa, and I'm just like, bro. And this is before I had sex. I was like, I don't know what it's like, but I was like, I want to do that. I was like, sign me up, Jesus. Um, you know, But that is one of them. I have another one, like rent a cabin with someone for a weekend. I've always wanted to do that. And there's a few. So just to give you an idea, so that's my sexy spicy bucket list. I haven't crossed everything off on it. I have taken sexy pictures. I will say that. Um, Anything else? Other stuff. So yeah, other stuff that's a little bit more personal. I'm not going to go into, but I did create that. That's going back to my situation, my story. I did create that list, and I said, and I did that because I wanted to explore the feminine side of me because again, my hormones, I didn't have like the lusty, like when you go through puberty, it's almost like I hit puberty like much later, because let's get scientific, because I love science, not chemistry science, but medical science. Um, right? Let's discuss it. When you get to puberty, men, you have testosterone. Women, you have estrogen, progesterone. And when you're a woman, you develop your breasts. My boobs. You develop your breasts, hair, pubic hair. But I'm gonna go there. Like this is, I don't mind going there. This is what we need to talk about, right? What else? Underarm hair, like unless you have PCOS, maybe facial hair, God forbid. Um, and also you have your menses, you get your period, right? You have your menstrual cycle starts. That's when you reach like the peak of your reproductive cycle, especially for women, because you experience your menstrual cycle, right? You you release an egg, and then the lining of the uterus sheds, like the blood sheds, because it's waiting for a fertilized egg, and then it goes choo, 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 and then and you get cramps, you have PMS, you get bloating, you get stomach aches. If you're like me, you have really, really bad, 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 bad cramps, and heavy everything. Sorry if that's TMI, but it's the truth. I'm a woman. That's right. And then for men, they, from what I understand, their testes descend, or their testicles, right? If you want to be crude, you say their ball sack. I know that doesn't sound appropriate, but it's the truth. And then other parts get enlarged, chest hair, facial hair, Adam's apple, your voice. So when you talk like this, they're really high, then their voices get deepen and lower. Also underarm hair, all of that stuff happens. And then your hormones, right, kick in. So imagine literally at 15, 14, even 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, men are literally, and still that carries on, but they know, I think, maybe regulate it better. They're walking hormones, literally. Um, so that's kind of a little backstory of that with reproductive health. So all of that stuff did not hit me until later on. Now, if you ask, well, why did you wait so long? I did feel, to be honest, I felt like A, that I was going to be bad at it. B, I was scared to be naked in front of somebody. C, I hadn't really met anybody that I felt inclined to do that with, like kissing and all that. It was just not my thing, and there were some guys, like I did my first boyfriend I had at 14. Um, and then I did go out on dates and stuff. When I was in college, there was this one guy that I did like. He was in my macroeconomics class. He sat at the back of the class. He was very quiet. He was tall, had like blonde hair, blue eyes. I thought he was super cute. He wore basketball shorts all the time. Come to find out, he played soccer. He went to Killian High School in Miami. And then I actually find out when I go to college to FIU, because I got my AA from Miami-Dade and I transferred to FIU. Lo and behold, for such a small world, one of my classmates knew him. I don't know how, but she knew him. And she's like, oh, yeah, I went to high school with him. And his girlfriend is so and so. And they've been together for years. I'm like, what year were they together? And she's like, oh, so and so year. And I'm like, so he was flirting with me and talking to me while he had a girlfriend. I'm like, jaw drop. I'm like, that explains everything. And mind you, we were texting and everything. He was like one of the first boys that I was like, oh my God. And then, but he did tell me that he did smoke weed. He would talk a lot about weed in Oakland, California. So that kind of was like concerning to me. I was like, because I don't do drugs. So I was like, I was a little funky. So anyways, just a little bit more tidbit into history of dating and stuff for me. Um, But yeah, so I did my sexy spicy bucket list in Virginia. I was 32, whatever. And then I finally did it. And then, it started this domino effect that snowballed into me being like a kid in a candy store, like, oh my God, this is why. Now I get why people like this so much. Now, this is where the video really is gonna like the subject matter comes into play. Um, and I still struggle with this. And I don't know if I need to see like a sex therapist or if I need to talk to a regular therapist about it. But and actually, I kind of have touched on it with the therapist I'm speaking to now. And she's told me and it's weird because she's told me this, but I still feel sinful. I still feel inadequate, not inadequate, but I feel wrong. I feel guilty sometimes because when I have these conversations that veer on, sometimes I'll be honest, like explicit, like things get really, and I go, I don't know if it lends itself for me like naivety or, maybe a man is trying to push, because there's a spectrum, right? There's a spectrum when it comes to sex. You have very basic vanilla, that's the mainstream term, right? Vanilla sex. There's even like a perfume by Tom Ford he came out with, and I thought it was gonna be really good. I think it didn't linger. I love vanilla. I love vanilla, coconut, and lavender. Those are like my three favorite smells. Mix them together, it's heaven. Anyways, but yeah, he came out with a perfume called Vanilla Sex, right? Um, so there's vanilla sex, and then you can have raunchy, carnal, rough, domineering, kind of sex, right? That's like very, right? And I'm sure if you guys, like, if you've engaged in intimate acts, right? Or sexual acts, sexual intercourse, you'll understand that. And I think everyone has a preference of what they like. And I almost feel like, and this is just me, I don't want to generalize my experience. Please, if you do listen, even if it's one person that listens to this, if you're that one person, please don't feel like if what I'm saying doesn't resonate with you at all, then you can turn it off, stop watching, whatever. But I don't want to generalize my experience for everybody else. This is just what I've ascertained from my personal experiences. I was going to say my name. I'm not going to say my full name because this is YouTube and I don't want to, but there is a spectrum, right? You have really vanilla. I don't want to call it mediocre because maybe that's what you like. Maybe, and we're going to get a little technical here, right? Because I'm talking about navigating pleasure and intimacy as a woman of faith, as a woman of God, and a Christian, right? Um, and kind of highlighting the intersectionality between those things, right? Where's the overlap? Where's the distinction? Where's the discrepancy? Is it sinful to like sex? What is deemed permissible or acceptable? Will I be banished? Will I be banished to hell for engaging in oral sex? Will I be banished to hell for watching pornography? Um, will I be banished to hell for other people giving me oral sex? Like these are the things that have been that kind of weigh on me. But when you talk about the spectrum of sex, you have there's vanilla, right? Systematic, like customary, which is, if we're talking about positions, maybe missionary. Maybe if even maybe some women might not even want to be on top because that might be too vulnerable. That might be too sexual for somebody. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have threesomes, group sex, orgies, um, you can maybe do sex toys. There's BDSM. There's like more kinky stuff, right? And the world of sex is so much more vast than what I thought it was. I literally just thought it was penetrative, like penetration. It's so much more than that. There's like foreplay, there's the kissing, there's the touching, there's the hair playing, there's the stroking, there's um, the sex talk before, there's the sexual banter, there's the flirting, there's the seductive glances, there's the way you dress, there's lingerie, um, there's the sex positions. There's so much more. And because of that, when I first, now, like after I've been in it and I've engaged in these things with different men, right? I learn, well, what I like and what I don't like, what I feel comfortable with and what I don't feel comfortable with. And then, there is the idea of like you can't knock it until you try it. Like there's anal sex, there's sex toys, there's butt plug, there's all these things that I've never ever done ever, right? And this is where when I talk about my faith and my religion, because I was raised Catholic. So in the Catholic Church, and I just to repeat, homosexual, I'm not gay, but I'm straight, but the different things in sexuality in our textbook, in my religion class, in my theology class in like 8th grade, I remember it saying it was a sin. Homosexuality, um, premarital sex, masturbation, all of those things were considered sinful. So I kind of care. And there's the show Jane the Virgin. In the Jane the Virgin show, her grandmother um, tells her to grab a flower, and that the flower is basically a metaphor for. She tells her, get the flower, el flor, and then squash it. And then she says, what do you have? And Jane's like, as a little girl, she's like, it's ruined. And she's like, and the grandmother goes, exactly, in Spanish. She's like, no es un flor, like anymore. Um, and so she tried to basically talk about how when you lose your virginity, if it's too early before marriage, before matrimony, you are tainted. You are a slut. You are a whore. You are ruined. Um, and I think that's honestly where the whole idea of when we get married, we wear a white wedding dress because you want to be virginal and pure, right? Um, so I just think it's interesting because as a grown woman now, and when I engage in conversation, I mean, and let me tell you, and I think it goes there with some of the men that I talk to because there is a mutual attraction, right? And that lets me, I'm like, okay, thank God. I'm like, I have hormones. I'm like, all those things that I thought I didn't have before. I'm like, yes, my reproductive system is working, my brain is working, you know? And I also think in terms of like neurology and science. So I literally go, okay, check. My pituitary gland is whatever, my adreno, whatever thingy is working. My whatever, the parts of the brain that govern that, right? Um, so I'm like, yay, my reproductive health is intact. Um, so I'm happy in that sense. But then when it comes to, the aftermath of it, right? Where I go and it gets sexually, I'm gonna be honest, I've had conversations that people would go, if anyone saw them, they would go, ah, my, which I don't know if I said my name on here. My name's Ashley, right? They'd probably go, they'd drop their jaw. They'd probably be like, Ashley in lingerie. Ashley's wearing skimpy thongs and wearing garters, and because I do have lingerie that has like a garter, and so I was subscribed for a little bit to this box called this company called Adore Me, and I don't know how I first came about it. I think it was either on Facebook or Instagram, and they send you a box. It's so cute. I miss doing it, but actually some of the things now I'm kind of like I've kind of seen majority of them, and I've tried on different things. And they actually have clothes now. Shout out to Adore Me. They actually sell clothes. Um, but one of the things that was like I don't know how to describe it. It's made of lace. It's a bodysuit. It's like maroon burgundy colored, and it has like these little like straps that extend down your thigh. It's very seductive and very provocative. I'm not going to show it. I have pictures of myself in it. I'm not going to show it on here because I probably would be excommunicated from the YouTube community, which I don't want to happen. I want to very much, I like putting out the content and helping people, right? That's why I'm doing it. And by the way, I'm not monetized. You have to have like 50 million followers to get monetized. I'm literally just doing this out of the graciousness of my heart because I want to help people. And I can't volunteer anywhere because there's nowhere to volunteer here in St. Albans except the homeless shelter. But they wouldn't even, they don't have any opportunities. But it's okay. I've donated clothes to them. So that's that. Um, but yeah, where was I? I was talking about the thingy. Oh, Jane the Virgin, flower, purity, marriage, matrimony, wearing white. Um, oh, yes, the spectrum. So you have really very like modest, demure, and some couples, like when you think about it, like you wonder, like the Amish. I was reading because I was actually looking, I was like, where should I move to? And I Googled, like, where's the best city for singles in the United States? And apparently, I don't know why, it was on Reddit, I think. They're like, oh, Lancaster, PA, but they're like, but be mindful, it is Amish country. And then I read more about Amish country. They lead a very simple lifestyle. And I'm like, but and their garments, they're very like, it's very modest. Like they wear bonnets maybe, and they wear like these very, I don't want to say blasé, but like very muted, basic, uniform kind of garments and aprons and dresses. And I'm like, I wonder what they're, I literally thought to myself, I'm like, what is their sex life like? Like, imagine like someone that's Amish, like, taking off the dress and they're like, yes, take me now, like, I just can't imagine that. Um, like an Amish woman being very demonstrative. And that'd be a great sociological study too, like how their perception and views of sex are. And you wonder, do they just have sex strictly for procreation, or do they have sex for pleasure? I don't know. These are the things that cross my mind. I did study sociology, so my brain kind of tinkers into the realm of research. I just can't help myself. So, um, and I get very technical about it too. But anyways, so going back to the spectrum idea is that you have the very vanilla, and then you kind of have, I feel like, to me, after the experiences I've had, I'm kind of in the middle. I can't really say I'm really more kinky. I can't really say that I'm like super vanilla. I kind of, I like the novelty. I like the variety. I like the chemistry. But one thing I am big on is, number one, building a foundation, like a solid rapport and foundation, and the chemistry that I have with somebody. Because to me, my theory is that I've come to learn is that the more, the stronger the connection or the friendship between the individual and yourself, the better the love making or sex will be. And I wish that there was a way that someone could be like, can write and be like, yeah, like, or you'd say, no, that's not the truth. I don't know. You can, if you want to debate me and contest me, that's fine. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm not an authority on sex. I'm not like, oh, I'm right all the time. No, this is just saying, that's why I said, don't generalize it to everything. It's just my experience. Having had sex later on in my life. Um, but yeah, I honestly, for me, it's like, I fall kind of in the middle where it's like, I don't want the super explicit, almost could be considered sexually deviant behavior, but I do like if, there is a sense of like, not necessarily manhandling, but a man who knows how to take charge and knows how to pleasure a woman and also cares about a woman's pleasure. Because some men, I've learned that they sometimes don't even care about you. You're just literally, you're no less than a blow up doll. So, what I've realized is that, that you kind of sift and sort through what you want by having these conversations with the men, right? That's why you get to know them and say, hey, what's your job like? What are the things that move you? What are the things that motivate you? What empowers you? What impassions you? Because when you do all this kind of like, in sales, they talk about the discovery phase, right? And you engage in like you discover what the client wants and what the client needs. It's kind of like the same thing. You're kind of discovering what that person's intentions are, what their views on sex are. So, and I'm very big on talking because you kind of determine your compatibility on all fronts, like the sexual compatibility, the mental compatibility, the physical, all of that. So, yeah, it's interesting to me because, some men are very, very kinky, and they'll want to do things that I think are not comfortable. Like I would not want a man, and I'm not going to say come, I'm going to say ejaculate on my face. That's just, to me, it's inappropriate. The face is not meant to be splattered on. Maybe you disagree with me, but that's a boundary for me. And I know as a woman, and when I say a godly woman, because when you think of the Catholic Church, you think of Christianity, there is this connotation of purity that's associated with it. So this is my plight when it comes to sex, is sometimes I feel almost sinful or guilty when I talk in a very almost sexually explicit manner. Like if a guy says, yeah, tell me what you would do to me, and I am I'm not gonna say a storyteller, but I do like to write. So visual appeal, visual stimulation is big to me. So I like to create vivid imagery. So I'll say, I don't know, something I don't know if it's too personal. Um, I don't know, but now I'm embarrassed to talk about it. Like maybe, you say, oh, kiss my way down your jawline and then make my way slowly down your chest. And, it gets, whatever, but, or I put my fingers in your hair and, twirl, your hair between my fingers and maybe bite your lip or something, or your earlobe, and then trace my nose down your jaw to, your collarbone, and then slowly, you know, stuff like that. That's more sensual, right? But that's what I'm describing. Like that's, and then, but when it gets really, when you're talking about when you're getting to the lower half, the manhood, right? There's, I can get pretty descriptive, and this is because I did watch porn. I have read romance novels, and and I like to build up that tension, that sexual tension with whoever my partner is, right? So, and it does get things heated, and then sometimes it gets so heated that, maybe pictures are exchanged or whatever, videos. And I've asked myself, I go, does this make me any less of a person? Um, does me liking sex make me a bad person? Does me talking in an explicit manner with another person of the opposite sex, does that make me sinful, right? Um, what is permissible? Um, and I've actually, in recent days, I felt almost guilty because I'm like, there were things I've done recently, like even sexually, like, that would be construed as by some as very inappropriate, maybe sexual behavior. Just want to preface, no group sex, no orgies, no swigging, nothing like that. I've never been to a sex club, and I never will. But no BDSM, stuff like that. More so along the lines of visuals and sexting, if you catch my drift. So, and there were things that were a first for me, and I'm like, does it make me a whore? Does it make me a bad person? And even though, like in therapy, I brought this up to the therapist I speak to, um, she's told me and it's funny, there's another guy too that I'm not talking to, but this was months ago. He said something really profound and poignant to me. He says, why would you feel bad about something that's human nature? And I was like, yeah, well, because I grew up, in this household, and I didn't feel comfortable with it because I thought it was sinful. And he's like, no, it's human nature. Animals do it, humans do it. You shouldn't feel bad about it. And so I literally have a post-it in my by the desk where it says sex. It's on a pink post-it, and I put it there. It says sex is human nature. And I also have on my desktop on my computer, there's this little post-it application. I would put it there because for me, I would remind myself, like, I would feel guilty sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm, in lingerie. I'm talking about what I would do if I was alone with a guy and he was naked and his, man bits and man berries and ding dong was out and about. And what would I, what would I do if, that happened and he was aroused and I was aroused as well? Um, does that make me less of a child of God? Right? Um, these are things as of late, recently I go, because I guarantee if let's say my father got a handful of, like, by chance, they got a hold of the text message exchanges I've had, or anybody else in my family, their jaw would probably drop. My mom would probably say I'm a whore, and I'm not. To me, I'm not, and I'm not a whore because I don't. So one thing I will say is if I go into dating, I'm very conscientious about my sexual health. I'm very conscientious about consent. There has to be a mutual agreement between both parties about boundaries and what one person likes and what one doesn't. And so it's not like I'm going to go around, and I've deleted guys that I will say that I am a card reader. I'm very spiritual, and I do that on the side. And when I pulled cards on certain men and it said that they were polyamorous or cheating or unavailable or unstable in some way or using me just superficially, they were gone. Like, I deleted them, no questions asked, or I was very polite and I'd say, hey, this is not, and that's what I'm all about, because I don't believe in infidelity. I don't practice polyamory myself, and I believe in safe sex practices, right? Um, Whether it's you use a condom, I don't have an IUD myself. I'm kind of scared to get an IUD, to be honest. From what I've heard, they're really, really painful, and apparently doctors don't use local anesthetics on you. So I'm just like, ooh, eesh, I just can't. So I use, shout out to Natural Cycle. I have been doing it. I have, in terms of its efficacy, I don't know. You have to, just a little blurb, you have to log in every day your temperature. this is what it looks like. You have your Face ID, which I will do, and then this is what it looks like, the main screen. And then you have your calendar here, and it looks like this. And then the green days are days that you're safe with in terms of sexual encounters or whatnot. And then the red is like, no, you have to abstain from sex or use a condom or something like that. Um, it is, again, I don't know. I haven't been sexually active since I've used it, to be honest. I don't think so, right? Did I log it in here? I don't think so. Because I've been much more diligent about it and using it. But you get your thermometer. You can also connect the Aura ring if you have an Aura ring that has a sensor. I did have an Aura ring once. I didn't like it too much. It was very bulky to me. If they made it smaller and thinner, I would have been like, yay, but it was very thick. And it didn't really fit me. It didn't fit. I have a very small ring finger. I'm like a size, I know it's small, like that's tiny, tiny, tiny. Um, or no, actually, I think they said to put on your thumb, but it still was too, what's it called? Too big for me. Um, but yeah, this is, and I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's like, to me, I really like and then you know, if you talk about Christian faith, right? If we go there, we talk about the Bible, and you look at Mary Magdalene, right? And I was thinking about this before when because I was in a regular t-shirt before. I was like, let me look presentable when I record a video, and I was ironing my hair, I was putting makeup on, right? I didn't want to look like a scary ghost, you know, coming on here. So I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know, in the Bible, Jesus, right? Who we all know Jesus, right? Yeshua, Yahweh, however you want to call Jesus, right? JC, the OG, the prophet, God's son, whatever. Um, Actually, I don't want to say whatever. I want to have more respect and reverence than that. But um, he, if you haven't really watched the show The Chosen, I haven't gone through all the seasons, but it's really interesting because he surrounded himself with not people that were rich or elite. He surrounded himself with beggars, lepers, tax collectors, burglars, con artists, I guess scammers, what the modern day scammer is now. He, you know, um, uh, like money hungry, greedy people, um, uh, kind of got people that were kind of rough around the edges, and you know, Mary Magdalene, who was a prostitute essentially, but you know, she was going. I think she was going through a lot because I can't remember what happened exactly. If something, I think she was, from what I remember, I think she was raped by a Roman soldier, if I'm not mistaken. There was she had a very poor experience with like a guard or a Roman soldier, and it just like, she basically had like PTSD, and then she ended up, because of that, I don't know if she was thrown into prostitution, like on her, if she chose it on her own volition, or if she just kind of went along that path because she was trying to cope through the trauma of what, like the sexual experience that she had, right? Um, so, anyways, but that's who Jesus surrounded himself with, right? And I thought about it, and I'm like, you wonder, you know, like because those are not people that you would think, oh, like godliness, right, and holiness, because they weren't that holy, right? These were kind of like, some of the people were actually like kind of shady as shysters, right? They were kind of like the get rich quick kind of people, you know, um, like I'll make a buck or two by, you know, trying to con someone else. Those were the kind of people that he hung out with, and then you know they became his disciples, and they decided to listen to his word, and they decided to turn over a new leaf, and they devoted themselves to, you know, God's work. And um, but I sit back and sometimes I wonder, I go, am I being, is it wrong of me to want to engage in pleasure and intimacy, right? Um, as a Christian woman, because you talk about, like, you go to church, right? I guarantee you're not talking about panties dropping and, you know, getting wet and getting hard, or you know, fucking, sorry to say it, fucking somebody, right? You're not going to talk about that in church. They talk about, you know, coveting, you know, your wife or your spouse or your husband, right? They talk about not being disloyal to them. They talk about fidelity, right? Um, the Ten Commandments, that kind of thing. So, and even and actually, so in yogic, and I consider myself, I do follow yogic principles. In yoga, they call it the yamas and the niyamas, or the eightfold path of yoga. And in this, yamas and niyamas, in this, I think there's a strong relation between the yamas and the niyama, the eight, not the eightfold path, the eight limbs of yoga. And one of them is, hold on here, please. I will bring it up, I will find it. There's like asteya, non-stealing, ahimsa, non-violence, brahmacharya, non-excess. Um, there's one that's talking about, is it santosha? Santosha's contentment. There's one about abstinence. Oh, saucha, cleanliness and purity. Maintain cleanliness of body, mind, and surroundings. Hold on. I want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing because I don't want to say the wrong thing. Saucha. I think it's saucha. But anyways, they have the different, just to go over, the ahimsa is nonviolence, and these are all Sanskrit terms. Ahimsa is nonviolence, satya is truthfulness, asteya is non-stealing, brahmacharya is right use of energy, aparigraha is non-greed, tapas is austerity, saucha is cleanliness, vidya is self-study, santosha is contentment, ishvara pranidhana is surrender to the divine. So santosha is really the one that goes along with this, talking about purity. So I kind of, and the reason for that, I'm a registered yoga teacher with, the Yoga Alliance. So sometimes I'm just like, even that community, like, how do you, and you would think, oh no, the yoga people, oh, they're flexible. And I will be honest, I've used that. I've said, oh yeah, I'm very flexible. I'm a dancer. So, when it comes to sex, put two and two together. So, but I've gone there, right? And I'm like, I do feel like guilty for engaging in what would be construed as otherwise explicit sexual behavior. Not lewd behavior. Like, I'm not talking about like having sex in public in the street or stripping or whatever, but it's just things that, maybe some, and the thing is, what I am really, after talking about it and kind of engaging in some like self-reflection and introspection through this little, the video, I don't say video conferencing, but just highlighting or talking about this stuff, I do realize that I think what we like, and again, I'm not a therapist, this is my experience, right? I think what we like is subjective to us. So what that means is not to say that one way of particular behavior is wrong, right? Someone could say, like, if you're in the Christian community, you go, oh my God, orgies, threesomes, swinging, group sex, BDSM, that's sinful. Which part of me, I do think if you're overly like gratuitous, right, or gluttonous when it comes to sex, I do think everything should be taken in excess and moderation. And there are things that are very, I think, very sexually deviant and I would say inappropriate, right? But I think if you're someone that you are mindful, you engage in safe sexual practices, you engage in honest, open communication with a partner. I've learned, I finally can say, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And what you like, what we choose to like, we're all going to have different preferences. Some people may like to have their toes sucked on. Some people may like to have feathers dangled across their back, and that's what turns them on. Some people like to go to sex shops and buy sex toys or edible candy, or I don't, like I've seen like edible like necklaces, or like, some people, I will say I wouldn't do it. I've had a coworker when I was working as a server in Coral Gables. She was very open about it, and you could see it through her shirt. She had like her nipples were pierced, and she was very okay with it. And she was treated me nice. I mean, would I do that? I feel like it would hurt like hell. And to me, your breasts are meant. They are, boobs are. As a woman, I say they're meant for primarily lactation, right? When you think about it, when you're pregnant and you produce milk, which is, I think, prolactin, but don't quote me on it. You produce colostrum, which is the first milk, and then you produce prolactin, and which is breast milk. that's the primary reason why they're there. They are very erogenous zones, so if they're touched and stuff like that, that would turn on a woman, right? At least for me. Um, uh, so that to me, I think is okay, in my opinion. Um, Now, when you talk about things like, sex with multiple partners, being sexually deviant in the sense that maybe you, let's say, and I could do this if I want to, but I don't. Let's say you match with somebody and then you match with someone else and you sleep with one person one day and then you sleep with the following another person the next night. That to me is that would be sexually deviant behavior, in my opinion. So, um, there's a spectrum. And I think we all are going to have our own sexual preferences, right? Maybe you're not one, maybe you don't want to do Kama Sutra or whatever, or Tantra. Maybe you're just like, I like it this way and we keep it simple and it works. Or maybe you're kind of like me and you're like, hey, I'm interested in trying out XYZ position or something like that. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, penetration, all that, I finally can say, honestly, I go, it's normal. I will say sometimes there's things that I go, you know, dirty talk, sexting, where is it, like I said, the intersectionality between Christianity and, being pure and appropriate versus being sexually deviant or promiscuous? Where does that fall, because I guarantee you, like, I've been told, like, my mother's logic and reasoning when it comes to that compared to mine, there are vast differences. Um, and I'm sure there's some women that could probably contest me and say, oh, pornography. Mind you, pornography, I think if there's certain things that are just totally like disgusting on those sites, and you have to be careful that you don't get a virus, because it's sometimes the things that come up are so gross and vile and disgusting. And there's other times where it's like, okay, this is a little bit classier, you know. Um, but yeah, I will say that I think for me, that's why I really don't resonate with Catholic faith anymore, because for that reason. Now, if I had children of my own, would I want them hooking up and having sex before 18? Probably not. Even though it's life, we have sexual organs. I mean, think about it. For a man, it's sticking out of their body, right? It's external. For women, it's internal, right? We have the machinery, the anatomy is internal. For a man, think they have to walk around with this organ that, not to say it's like a rod, but it sticks, it's between their legs. That might be kind of uncomfortable. And they have to walk around, that's uncomfortable. So they are going to be thinking about that, more throughout the day. So it's like, I think I always like to say, the videos that I've been doing, I've been saying at the end, give yourself grace. And I'm going to do the same for me, because, and don't, if you happen to be like me and you grew up very modest and pure, whatever, do not feel ashamed for owning your femininity. Do not feel ashamed for, I'm not, and I will be honest, I'm not one, I don't dress provocatively. When I go outside the door, I've never worn anything sheer or see-through, ever. Um, like just the other day, I was on the Flip app, and one of the girls, she looked young. She looked maybe 19, 20, and she's like, oh, I got this cute shirt, and it was red, and it was basically like sheer lace, and it was like a small short sleeve cap thing, and she loved it. And she's like, oh, I wear a black bra underneath. She's like, this is the perfect date night outfit. And I'm like, I was cringing, because I'm like, she's gonna show her bra on a date, like, and that to me, I look at that as inappropriate. But now, whatever she does in the privacy of her home, or whatever I do in the privacy of my home, that's between me and the person doing it. Now, I will say that that lace shirt that was see-through or sheer may not be as, um, what's the word, salacious or lewd, if done in the comfort of your home, because that's your home, right? You're not out in public you're not a nudist, you're not flashing people, right? So I think, again, if you are someone like me and you ever felt like, oh, I feel weird talking about, or, you feel sinful because you were raised Catholic or Christian, I would say don't feel like that. And if you are having feelings, like if you are experiencing cognitive dissonance, or you're feeling shame and guilt, maybe do what I did. Like, maybe you can do, maybe you do a video diary, maybe, and you don't post it on the internet. Maybe you do a journal. Maybe you get a therapist who specializes in sex therapy, because that is a thing. There are actually, and there's a lot to be said, like when you talk about childhood trauma or inner turmoil and attachment theory and attachment style. That is all. So attachment theory, which is, don't get me wrong, because I studied this, child development, John Bowlby or John Bowlby. Hold on, let's double check, because I never want to provide inaccurate information. Who did attachment theory? Yes, John Bowlby. I was right. Thank God. There's also one of the other theorists I like is Yuri Brovенbrenner. He did the ecological theory, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But attachment theory is linked to, they found correlations between your attachment style to adult relationships and the formation of adult relationships, romantic ones later on, right? There's like avoidant, there's anxious attachment, there's there's like anxious avoidant, there's disorganized and secure. And we usually want to go for secure attachment. So, but if you are someone like me, I do encourage you to, if you do feel, again, I'm not a therapist, don't take my word as law, do not take it as fact. I'm just merely sharing my insight and my experiences with other people on the World Wide Web so that they cannot feel so alone, because I felt alone. And I go, I wish I had someone I could have watched and listened to and be like, okay, I'm not a weirdo. I'm just developing at my own pace and I'm going to get there in my own time. And, you know, when it comes to religion and things like that, when you think about it, and if you are a person, if you do believe in God, something in the universe, right? Some higher power, I don't think we as humans, right? If if sex wasn't pleasurable, we wouldn't want to do it, right? If sexual intercourse felt horrible or whatever, like it's meant to be pleasurable, right? The mechanics of it, when you think about it, that like in heterosexual, you know, context, it's meant to be pleasurable, right? There's the gyrations, the thrust, the this and that. There's the reason why things happen the way they do, and why we climax, why we orgasm, why a man ejaculates, and that goes into the baby chute. I call the vagina the baby chute, the baby canal, and then that the little sperm fly their way up, and then boom, you know, the babies are created. So again, I don't think if it's meant to be a pleasurable experience. Now, like I said, with anything, I think if you do it in excess, sex addiction, porn addiction, alcohol addiction, shopping addiction. I'm trying to make sure I don't veer into shopping addiction. I don't shop every day, but I do like to save things that I like on my wish list and stuff. And I really do love Stitch Fix. Shout out to Stitch Fix. Um, so yeah, I don't think again there's anything wrong with you. If you're like me, if you feel guilty at all and you're like, oh, but should I have sent that text message? Should I have been so seductive or provocative? Don't overthink it. Don't, like, for me, don't sit there and be like, oh, you're gonna go to hell. No, you're learning and you're growing, and that's part of life. You're supposed to engage in sexual exploration. Me, I did it a little bit later in life. Maybe you did it at 14. Maybe you did it at 16. Maybe you did it at 25 or 21 or 30, right? Um, but it's subjective to you, right? And that's what makes the world so amazing, is that we all have these varied experiences. And I will say what's nice though is that when you do meet someone that, I like to say, jives with your vibe, or what you can consider a soulmate. And I think I will do a video later on about what I consider soulmates, kindred spirits, twin flames, that whole phenomenon, right? I will do a video on that, because I used to be very big into the whole twin flame thing, and now I'm like, and I actually have cards that, like, it says twin flame on it, but I like to think we're all kind of mirrors of each other and we're interconnected. So, you know, your divine counterpart might or there's like karmic twin flame people, and there's like the real ones, you know, like your real, the person that's your person. And there's a whole school of thought that goes into that. I think they did a Netflix documentary on Shalia and Jeff, who, and I actually used to watch them, and I stopped watching them because I was like, I don't know, the whole twin flame journey kind of talks about, it seems a little bit like like narcissistic abuse, to be honest, because there's this whole idea of like, you meet your person, but it's not the right time. And then you separate, you're in separation. And then you go through turmoil because they piss you off and they trigger you. And then one goes through healing and the other one doesn't. And then the other one tries to meet up at their level, but then the other person might be married or in a relationship. So then that other person there's like a runner and a chaser, it's this whole thing. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm going to focus on myself and I'm not going to worry about who. I do have cards where I put TF, like or karmic soulmate. I believe that in my opinion, just a little tidbit, I do think we can have multiple soulmates in our lifetime, which are people who maybe from a past life you knew, or someone, because I'm sure anyone else can relate. When you meet someone for the first time, there's some people where you're like, you hit it off. Like, the conversation flows, whether it's platonic or romantic. And you're like, man, I feel like I've known you before. That's probably maybe because there's a past life connection, right? If you believe in reincarnation and all that. I do. Um, and, you feel like it's your soul sister, right? They may not be your actual biological sister, but like I'll say a perfect depiction of this, of soulmates, platonic ones. Keke Palmer and SZA in their movie One of Those Days. Totally, that's total platonic soul spirit, soul kindred vibes. At least the characters are, and their rapport in the movie was really, really good too. Um, anything, yeah. So, but anyways, going back to what I was saying about kind of navigating pleasure and intimacy as a Christian, right? I think there is a saying, "Don't knock it until you try it." I think we all are gonna all go on our own sexual exploration journey, and we're gonna figure out what we like and what we don't like. And if you're married and you're in a monogamous relationship, what you do between you and your spouse is your business. And if you ever feel ashamed of it, I encourage you talk to your spouse or your partner about it. And on the other side of it, let's say you want to explore more and you want to do more things, have an open. If you have a good partner in your life, if you're married to someone or you're in a relationship with someone that's like you have a solid foundation and you have great chemistry and great communication, tell them, say, hey, I want to try this, this, and this, and don't feel ashamed about it. If they love you, they'll be like, hey, let's do it. Why not? Um, and that might look different to, that might be something like, let's say, I don't know, I've never done role playing, like, let me be the French maid and dress up with the little apron and go, with the feather duster. I've never done that. But maybe you want to do role play, pretend you're meeting for the first time and, it's the first time you've ever seen each other naked or touched, I don't know, to spice up your love life, right? Um, and yeah, so anything else I'm trying to share that I wish to share? I think that's it. And yeah, don't feel shameful or, because I did at one point, I was like, oh my God, is God gonna like shun me? I will say though, your heart knows truly, like our heart, you will feel if you're someone who's in tune with your spiritual side, your inner sense of self, right? Your gut will tell you this feels off to me. This doesn't make me feel comfortable. And that's how you gauge, just like when you meet someone, you have your like your your emotional GPS, right? Your inner guidance like meter. And like after you talk to someone, you're like, oh, I feel really good around them, or no, I don't feel really good around them. Apply to maybe the same principle with sex. If you feel like it's appropriate for you, then it's probably okay. But if you feel like it makes you feel uncomfortable or uneasy, that's your emotional GPS, or your the red light and the yellow light, the caution signs going, hey, maybe this is not something that's for you. And if on the other hand, I want to make this very imperative too, especially for women. I'm going to look out for women because I don't know in terms of grooming and sexual grooming and stuff like that. I've never heard of a woman doing that to a man. Um, but I will say for women, if you are a woman, be mindful of men that will push your boundaries when it comes to sex. For me, especially because I'm still, even though I was 32, I'm 33 now, I still kind of consider myself new to it in a sense. So there are men, and I've shared this with them. I said I've been navigating this world, and I'm kind of new to it. Still, I'm new to it still. Like I it's fairly new. I've been sexually active, right? And some of them will be like, oh, wow, I really respect you for that. And I want to respect your boundaries. Some of them will be like, oh, I've dabbled in this and that. And how would you feel about da 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 da? How would you feel about? I've been told, I literally have been told by a few people, they've asked if I would do a threesome, like how I feel about threesomes. And I say, no way in hell. I've been asked, um, how would you feel about another woman watching us have sex? I was like, no way. How would you feel about me giving you pleasure while I watch two lesbians engage and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So, be mindful because there it is. Sexual grooming is a thing. Um, Not to say I was necessarily a victim of it, but there have been men, I'll say, who have pushed my boundaries. And I think it's because, not to discredit them or disavow them in any way or talk poorly about them, because it's a learning experience, right? It was a learning process. But there are some men who will see the purity or virginity and things like that, or the naivety, and they'll be like, oh, okay, I can I can maybe groom her to be the level that I want her to be at, right? Or meet me at my level when maybe I don't want to do that. So be mindful of that because that is a thing. Sex trafficking is a thing. Sexual grooming is a thing. Um, Sex cults, sex orgy, all of that. Unfortunately, those not unfortunately they do exist, and some couples do that. Some couples engage in swinging. Do I condone that? Not necessarily. Um, we live in I think, a much more open culture when it comes to sex. Back then, like, if you slept with multiple men, if a woman slept with multiple men back in the 50s or 60s, you were considered a slut. A perfect depiction of this is like the movie Grease, right? Rizzo would make fun of Sandy because she was, very, very virginal, very pure, right? She didn't ever, I don't think, ever had sex. I think, um, Danny, the character Danny Zuko, he was with, was it the birds, the T-birds? I forgot, the Thunderbirds. That they were the rough crowd, right? And Sandy was a very demure, proper, she wore her yellow cardigans, she never showed much skin. The pink ladies, on the other hand, you knew that they got around the block. You knew that they were like, because they wore the tight pants, they wore the satin sheen pink jackets, right? They were the pink ladies. So it's kind of like you knew that they were the more provocative, sexually um, permissive women. Um, and she was known as, the floozy, right? Now it's like, now there's really, honestly, I think it's almost, we become a little bit too permissive, in the sense that, like, sexual exploration and, it's more, it is widely accepted, right? But like more open and fluid sexual behavior is more permissive and condoned. And it's almost like if you haven't done some things, you're like, oh, like you're too rigid, you're too modest, you're too prude, right? So, but I would say do what feels comfortable for you. And I don't think, in my opinion, God is going to ban anyone to hell. You're not going to be like, oh, you pass away and your soul leaves your body, and God's like, well, on December 4th, you met whatever at his apartment and you engaged in fellatio, um, whatever, numerous times, and other said individual reciprocated, and whatever, I don't think I think we're all, that's why we're here. I consider Earth a school, and I think we're all on our own journey, and some things you're going to be like, you may dabble in the kind of provocative for a little bit, and then you may go, you know what, hey, that's not really what I want to do. Um, So, it depends on you and what you like and what your preferences are. But I've learned I'm not going to feel ashamed for wanting to be intimate with somebody because we were built that way. Sex was meant to be pleasurable. If it wasn't meant to be pleasurable, we wouldn't want to do it, right? I think we should be mindful of who we do it with, right? You want to be mindful of your sexual partners because you're sharing your space, you're sharing your time, and you're sharing your body, right? So, yeah, I hope that helps somebody. And if you feel like you're in the same boat as me, feel free. I don't know if I think I have my email on there. It's for the email for the channel. You can write me if you want, or if you want to write in the comments. Also, for anyone, if you're going to write a snarky comment, please keep it to yourself. If you've never learned the age old, what's the old adage of, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. I literally, what was it today? I read comments about what some person, I don't want to call him a bozo, said. Oh, imagine because I put a video of my dog up, of Bonnie, and she was watching TV. It was actually, we were watching the show The Night Agent, and she was very engrossed in this one scene, right? And the guy, who I'm assuming he's a guy, he writes, I don't know, my headphones just went bye-bye for a second, so I might have to take my headphones off. I'm going to remove my headphones. So the guy writes on the feed for the specific video, he says, imagine you're trying to watch TV and this dumbass is chirping in your ear. And I wrote back to him and said, imagine you're trying to